Welcome to Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. Cool and unsettled weather will dominate here for the next few days as a more typical November pattern is finally settling into the western United States. Northwest flow will continue to bring snow chances to the high country. There's going to be some of the mountains of northwestern Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, the Pacific Northwest that really get a lot of snow here in the coming days, with the perfect setup for that. Now, it's going to be windy and chilly on the plains. Many areas did get a little bit of snow yesterday, but now it's going to be windy on the plains, snowy in the mountains, with episodes of gusty winds getting strong at times east of the divide. Now, we do see some better weather late this weekend and for the first half of next week. First half of next week, we kind of get a break in the wind and we get some high pressure and some better weather coming our way. But over the next 4 to 5 days, it's going to be unsettled. This is where we are today. This is yesterday's little storm that brought the snow to the high plains and Rockies. We have another wave right here that's going to be coming in during the day tomorrow, bringing more snow to this area right here, especially up into the high country of Colorado, Wyoming, back up into the higher terrain here. Just a really good setup as that moisture and flow comes in from the northwest. By Wednesday afternoon, here's that next wave coming on through. Then we've got this little guy coming on in as we see what happens later into the weekend by Saturday. Notice the flow of air. If we were to follow the flow of air from the Gulf of Alaska off the Aleutians into the Pacific Northwest and into the Rockies. So the air coming over the water, those strong jet stream winds basically just get a lot of moisture coming off the waters and driving that into the Continental Divide, driving into the Cascades, the Northern Sierras, and into the Northern and Central Rockies. Basically, folks, this is just a pipeline of moisture that gets forced into the mountain slopes. And since the air is really cold here, it's just a recipe to make it snow in the mountains. It's a recipe for mountain snow, but it's a recipe for downslope, windy conditions on the plains. So this is one of those situations where you're not doing much shoveling down low, but the snow's piling up high. By early next week, here's that break we talked to you about early in the podcast. We have high pressure that's going to come in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, warming us up. The jet stream retreats to the north briefly, and that's going to mean less wind as well. So it's going to be kind of unsettled and windy and chilly here over the next 4 to 5 days, a break in the weather early next week. But by late next week and the weekend of the 21st, we have another wave coming on in, and we get probably into the last week in November into an active weather pattern again with that northwest flow coming into the region. This is the 10-day precipitation forecast, and you can see as you get closer to the Pacific, you can see that the moisture is heavier from the Sierras through the Cascades, to the Wasatch Front, to the Yellowstone Plateau, to the Bitterroot. Just a lot of snow in the mountains there. Now, the further away you get, you don't have as much, but you're still going to be getting snow into the northern and central mountains of Colorado and into southern Wyoming and into the Bighorns. But certainly, this is a pattern from here to here that is just really good for that mountain snow to get really built up. This is what it looks like over the next 10 days. And you can see, now this may be overestimating, but you can see 2 to 3 feet of snow in the two Tetons, higher plateaus of Yellowstone, some of the mountains of central Idaho. This is going to be a really good start to the November snowpack. Taking a look at the 30-day outlook, what I'm going to show you here is what we always talk about with tendencies and trend. A lot of times you want to use the models to see the trend, not the exact amounts it's predicting. But for the next 30 days, this takes us through December 11th, the models are seeing the La Nina dominated flow continuing off the Pacific. So look at all this blue, much above normal precipitation for the Cascades and the Sierra Nevada. And look at all the green. The outline here basically is showing the higher terrain of the Intermountain West. That strong jet stream that you get in a La Nina just drives Pacific moisture into the mountains. But notice the brown. Notice what happens east of the divide. Below average precipitation. Because the air goes downslope, you get a Chinook. So this is where the western side of the ranges The western side of the divide catches the moisture. East of the divide doesn't get as much. This is textbook La Nina. Look at this purple right here. This is the 45-day long-range precipitation forecast. Again, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But you're looking at, over the next month and a half, extremely heavy amounts of liquid equivalent of water coming into the Cascades in the Pacific Northwest. Notice the colors fade as they go east. But if you look at the bullseye of the heavier precipitation, it lines right up with the tendency for that jet stream to be, more often than not, coming in from the Pacific Northwest, moving in. And again, see this patch of blue east of the divide? Downsloping. The downsloping conditions mean less moisture east of the mountains because it's more windy in this pattern. You got a little bullseye there in the Black Hills. Black Hills will sometimes get snow out of this, but east of the divide, it's a little bit less. And then you get back out into the plain states where the Gulf of Mexico has an influence and the precipitation comes up again. So this is something we have seen in the years past. And here is the latest sea surface temperature pattern. Very much a classic pattern of La Nina in the Pacific right now, with this warm pool up into the Gulf of Alaska, keeping that jet stream in a high pressure ridge there. And basically this setup, this contrast between the cold here and the warm here, you get a large temperature gradient, you get a strong jet stream wind driving that Pacific moisture into the northwest and north central areas of the United States. Now we talk about tendencies and what you tend to see. The Climate Prediction Center has a composite map here showing what you tend to see in La Ninas. You tend to see colder than average temperatures across the northern tier of the country in a La Nina, warmer in the southeast. Notice the green and the blue here? Notice this. That's exactly what I showed you in the 46-day forecast. The heaviest precipitation there. And if you were to convert that to snowfall, there again, you see above average snowfall in this part of the country right here. So it is a typical pattern that we've seen before. Thanks for listening and watching the Day Weather Podcast. We'll see you on